legal services to individuals, families, businesses, and nonprofits in Charlotte, North Carolina, and throughout the Carolinas. Our award-winning attorneys help out clients solve real-world problems and provide real-world value. On any given day, you can find our attorneys helping entrepreneurs start businesses from scratch or counseling them on buying existing businesses. Serving as fractional general counsel to a nonprofit, reviewing contracts, and ensuring compliance with regulators. Helping families plan their estates to ensure that their loved ones are taken care of after their time on the earth is through, and protecting the rights of individuals and families who have been victims in auto accidents. Litigating in court to provide a business who hasn't been paid the agreed amount, a contract. If interested in learning more about how our attorneys can help you solve real world problems, please visit our website at www.hullandchandler.com and schedule a consultation with one of our award-winning attorneys. The law firm of Hull and Chandler is proud to sponsor the Leadership Series, a program where Hull and Chandler attorney Rocky Cabagnat interviews local and regional leaders in the nonprofit, private, and public sectors to discuss the real-world interplay of law, business, and social dynamics within the context of our continuously changing times. And with that, Rocky.
Hey guys, well, hey, welcome. All right, so first of all, thank you for everybody coming at the middle of the week, Wednesday at 1 o'clock. I know that many of you may have other things to do at Wednesday at 1 o'clock, so we feel very blessed and privileged to have your time with us, and hopefully we will have something very substantial and something for you to go have a nice takeaway with. So, as Shannon said, I'm your host. I'm Rocky Cabagnat, and I help nonprofits stay legally compliant and avoid legal problems and secure with overall legal representation by providing fractional general counsel services or by utilizing our firm's subscription legal program for nonprofits to make sure that all of your needs are taken care of, whether, again, if it's reviewing a contract or dealing with a personnel issue or acquiring real property. And I think I see some folks here who have kind of gone through a lot of those things in the nonprofit sector. And so as a former executive director of my own nonprofit at one time, I've come to kind of see angles from all levels. And I think that it's really important for nonprofits to get their word out. When I was an executive director, I was always looking for a platform to be able to say in an undistilled format a lot about what our program is, what our nonprofit is passionate about, what our mission is about. And so the Leadership Series provides that platform, but we also want to tackle and discuss those issues that surround that mission because, obviously we wouldn't have the issues we have. Nonprofits need a mission and they need something to kind of the context to put them in today. And so today we're going to have a very, very important discussion about domestic violence and intimate partner violence. And joining us today are Laura Lawrence, who is currently the Chief Operating Officer and General Counsel for Safe Alliance, and MJ Vess, who is the founder and executive director of VictoryLife House, which is located here in Charlotte as well. I usually do a big spiel. I usually do sort of my little Paul Harvey thing where I kind of rant about some kind of topic. But today, I think we've got a lot packed into this particular episode. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guests as we already had. And I'm going to ask them both the question. I kind of cribbed it from my friend Patton McDowell, which his great podcast called Your Path to Nonprofit Leadership. If you are into podcasts, go ahead and check his podcast out. It's a really wonderful listen, particularly those who are in the nonprofit sector, particularly looking to in leadership positions as well in the nonprofit sector. So without further ado, let's welcome MJ and Laura to the show.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Well, we need like Shannon, I always say is we need to have like a canned audience sound, like they had on the old sitcoms or something like that. So we can, and then, what, maybe when I re-edit this, right, because I'm learning editing skills, I may very well put something, when you introduce me, I'll have a crowd noise, just really raucous, like it's like a rock concert sound level, like it's Kings of Leon or something like that. Here I come, here I am, but nobody, I'm just kidding. No, I would share the crowd side with everyone else. So let's get started. All right. So my question to each of you, and you, I think before the show, I think we decided that Laura would go first. Is Laura, to give our audience a little bit of background, tell us about your path to nonprofit leadership.
Sure. Well, first, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here. Again, I'm Laura Lawrence, and I am with Safe Alliance, which is a large domestic nonprofit that supports victims and survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. So I started out on a very different path. During law school, I clerked for the Honorable Sylvia Rambo on the federal bench in Pennsylvania. I then was in the DA's office and started as a litigator in Philadelphia, where I did environmental coverage litigation. And that at that time, is going to say my age, was a little while after CERCLA was enacted. And I then was recruited to come to Charlotte to work for Royal Insurance. And I worked at Royal for about 15 years. And my last position was General Counsel. I don't know if any of you have been in the area a long time, you may remember that Royal Insurance was actually sold. And so once it's sold, I was able to stay home for a few years. And then I had an opportunity to come work at Safe Alliance. And during that time, I have done things from very different, because in a nonprofit, you do everything. I've represented victims of domestic violence, getting domestic violence protective orders, and have done everything till now. My position as Chief Operating Officer over our programs.
Okay, thank you. All right, your turn, MJ. What is your path to being the nonprofit leader at VictoryLife House?
Thank you. Well, I wish I had known Laura when I came out of domestic abuse. So I was in a relationship, and for 6 years I went through abuse without ever getting hit. So I didn't correlate what I was going through as necessarily abuse. So I was also in a bit of a denial. So when I came out, my daughter actually came and got me from a small town in Maggie Valley, North Carolina, brought me to this huge town called Charlotte that I'd never been to before. And I had no car. I hadn't driven really in a long time. He had sold my car, and I never had another one after that. So I had no job. I had no work experience because I didn't work when I was married to him, and had no apartment, nowhere to live. So I really had not a whole lot. So about a month after I came to Charlotte, would have been November 2016, the Lord put this vision on my heart and I couldn't explain it because I didn't understand what it was, but it was women who were in a very, very nice, joyful environment. And I just tucked it away. Well, then I ended up getting a job that I didn't understand why I would get, because I'm dyslexic, but I was an insurance producer, which has to do with a lot of numbers. So I did not do well in this career. I think I sold one policy in the whole year. But during that time, because I'd gone through abandonment and isolation and control and manipulation and fear and anxiety, I actually had to learn how to re-talk to people. I had to learn how to talk to mostly men. I had to talk to men in suits, in business suits, who knew more about life insurance and financial advising than I did. I didn't even have a 401k. So it was very intimidating. But I think how it all transpired is because God said, okay, you're going to learn how to do this because I got a job for you in the future. So what happened at the end of that year, I was talking to one of my clients, and now I can now talk to men in suits. And I said, what is it about your job that makes you just hit the ground every morning and to just go out there and do it? Because I'm struggling in this career and I don't understand. He goes, well, I get to help people. And I was like, well, that seems so kind of bogus, because everybody can help someone, you know, in whatever career they're in, they're going to be helping someone, themselves or someone. And then the Holy Spirit said, well, you know, we've got a job for you. What have you done about it? So I thought, okay, well, from now on, every day I'm going to tell one person about that vision. And as soon as I did, within 3 months, I had a logo. My first person I talked to was my attorney, who helped me start the foundation. And so May of 2018, I founded VictoryLife House all by myself as a nonprofit, and I just started helping women, and I've been building it ever since. So now we offer classes, and I can talk about that later, but I'm super excited to just be out there helping people who I know what I needed when I got out, because I didn't even think about a safe house or people that could help me, because I didn't understand. So that's what Victory Life House is about, is we're the after going to see Laura and Safe Alliance, is coming to Victory Life House and going, okay, now what can I do? And we offer classes and whatnot, but I can talk about that later. Thank you.
Well, maybe at this time, maybe what we could do is we can dive into that a little bit more, and then I'll double back to Laura to kind of give an explanation of Safe Alliances, because I think what's great about our discussion today is that we've got kind of a wide array of sort of just experiences from both the personal and also from the institutional, right? Because we've got Victory Life House, which is a startup, and we've got Safe Alliance, which has been, in the community for quite some time and has built, a certain level of program and things of that nature. So I think that from both, I think we've got a great set of guests here and a great set of experiences. I think that's really great. So why don't you dive a little bit into, let us talk about the mission and everything about Victory Life House, just to kind of give our audience your chance to kind of give that elevator speech of sorts about Victory Life House.
It's kind of a long elevator speech, but I call it the Beauty from Ashes program, and it consists right now of 14 different classes that are online, and they're to help women from anywhere in the nation, even globally, who want to make new choices in their lives. These classes range from options on how to take care of yourself, goal setting, dating again, hobbies, addiction, spirituality, budgeting, career planning, resume building, handling emotions, analyzing why we stayed in the abusive relationship in order to see how we can change that in the future. So basically, it's preventative maintenance. So you've come out, you've experienced it, you've come out of it. You're saying, now what? Well, we want to prevent it. We don't want to continue the cycle. So let's prevent it. Let's teach you how to rethink, recalibrate your thinking. So I walk a student through these classes, and they're free right now. So they have accountability because I've included assignments in all of them. If they want to change their perspective for the future, they can. That's their choice. I also, in another segment of my program, is I have vendors who are advertising their services in their classes. So they're advertising for anyone in the nation who wants to come on, get a reduced rate, and get some professional help as well through them. So let's see, I have emergency contact numbers for every state in the nation. And when you click on that button, like for Arizona, it pulls up all the counties in Arizona of all their emergency numbers. I have a page specifically just for men, because men can be abused too by their intimate partner. Although I'm geared more towards women, that page also offers therapy for men who have used violence and who have received violence. I have a Q&A blog with a therapist who I met in Mississippi. And it's where I ask a bunch of questions about kind of what I went through, and then he answers in a professional therapeutic way. So that's a really great blog interview to have anyone just get some free therapy advice. I've started interviewing police chiefs around the nation, really just to find out how DV is in their area, if they've seen an increase since COVID, what they do when they're actually on a call, like what can a victim expect to receive from the police and services in that area. And I also have a blog called the Victory Life House blog. And on there, I'm sharing just different thoughts of my own, of what I went through, and more currently about kind of the legal aspect of what could be helpful. How can we change the legal system specifically for the survivors? So I'm trying to reach some senators and trying to see what we can do to get some laws changed if they aren't already happening, which would be great. But that's kind of it in a nutshell, what I'm offering.
Thank you. All right, so that's a little bit about Victory Life House, and you kind of get an idea of where it is in sort of the nonprofit cycle. So let's shift over and learn a little bit about Safe Alliance. I know that many of you may have heard of Safe Alliance, but I think that this would be a great opportunity to kind of get the full story about Safe Alliance from one of their spokespeople. Laura. So I think you're on mute, Laura.
Sorry, I was trying to make sure there wasn't back noise. So Thank you. And I think that MJ, it's so interesting to see where the life cycle of a nonprofit. So Safe Alliance has been around for about 112 years in different formats. So it's a really long-term nonprofit. And right now, our mission is to provide a continuum of services for survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. And I'm just going to real briefly talk about really the 5 main categories of what we do. First, many of you may be aware that we, Safe Alliance Clyde and Ethel Dixon Domestic Violence Shelter, serves Mecklenburg County residents who are in imminent danger and ready to escape from a domestic violence situation. Our shelter has 19 apartment-style suites for families and 10 units for single adults. Now, you guys can imagine that with COVID, this has been a very interesting 15 months. We have gotten to have the experience of taking where we had about 120 residents, and now we have about 75 in our shelter, and about 30 to 40 are in hotels. So we've gotten the experience of getting to run 2 shelters this year, which has definitely been one of the impacts of COVID recently. So now one of the others is that we have a 24-hour, 7 days a week hotline called the Greater Charlotte Hope Line. And this helps people who are seeking parenting support, guidance for domestic violence and sexual assault. Now, this resource is free and is confidential, safe, and staffed by highly trained advocates who have the knowledge and empathy to really help the person on the call. And we provide this single source knowledge for crisis intervention services, as well as support for prevention, which helps through education, guidance, emotional support, and referrals to appropriate community resources. We also have our Sexual Trauma Resource Center, which we call the STRC, and this provides victims of sexual assault things like the accompaniment at the hospital. So if they are in the hospital and having a rape kit done, our advocates will be there and support them during that process. We also provide ongoing advocacy for someone, whether it's a month after a sexual assault or 15 years after a sexual assault. We provide education support and emotional support to the victims and their non-offending loved ones. This includes trauma-informed counseling services and support groups. And our counseling is the only area that we do a sliding scale cost, but our average is extremely, extremely low for what a counseling session could cost. One of our other programs is our Victim Assistance Court program, where victims of domestic violence and sexual assault who are seeking a domestic violence protective order called a DVPO, and they will come in and our office will be able to support them not only in preparing the complaint, but giving that a crisis assistance and that support. Now, one of the really exciting things is that our office is able to help. Not only do we have advocates who serve as in a role of paralegals, but we have 2 Spanish-speaking attorneys and 2 English-speaking attorneys who review every complaint, and therefore we're really able to prepare that complaint the way an attorney would prepare the complaint. Those can be submitted and are submitted electronically to the court, so a survivor who is in this process can sit in our office and not even have to enter the courthouse. Their emergency hearing for the protective order is heard in our office, so they do not have to go into the courthouse. And then now, since COVID, there has been what's called WebEx, and our courts are now holding many of the one-year hearings through the WebEx system. And a victim can actually sit in our office with an attorney who is free, who will help and present their case and advocate for. So there's an emergency order for the DVPO, and then a 1 year that happens about 2 weeks later. And our attorneys represent for free in that 1 year. So someone who comes to the Victim Assistance Office has a continuous coverage of not just the advocate to prepare, help with the case management, but also with that free legal representation and assistance on the family law issues involved in the DVPO. And finally, we have started a new program in partnership with Mecklenburg County Community Support Services, the Department of Social Services, Charlotte Meck Police Department, and Pat's Place Child Advocacy Center. We've started this February the Survivor Resource Center. And this is a small scale solution to a complicated problem that survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, and child maltreatment can face as they seek help. This is a referral-only, appointment-based center that is the precursor to what Charlotte Mecklenburg is trying to do, and that is to build a family justice center, which we will name the Umbrella Center. And so victims who fall in those categories, who are dealing with the highest lethality issues, will be referred to the center to receive support from all of those on-site service providers, and also from some of our non-on-site providers like the district attorney's office, the sheriff's office, Atrium Health's domestic violence program. And so this support is all that's received at this referral center. So those are some of our centers, some of our services we provide.
That's awesome. Thank you, Laura. Again, I think we've had to kind of get that out of the way, kind of get the framework to kind of know who our guests are. And again, we want to give that platform so any of the nonprofits out there to kind of get a chance to, in an unfiltered format, be able to express to the public what your mission is all about. And so now we've got our audience here, and we're going to talk about the topic of domestic violence, intimate partner violence. Now, I know that many people may hear these terms and wonder, is there a difference, or is there just synonyms? And so maybe to kind of give a working definition is if I invite one of you to kind of explain to the audience domestic violence and intimate partner violence and what these terms mean. Are they specific to anything? So it helps the folks out there kind of know when they hear it, what it means.
I'll start, and then MJ, why don't you jump in? You know, domestic violence is really defined as it involves an intimate partner relationship, and it has one or both partners use physical, sexual, or psychological violence to try to get power and control over the other person. As MJ said, doesn't always involve physical violence. Many times it's the psychological, it's the control of the children, control of the checkbook. MJ talked about not having a vehicle. All those are ways of control. And this includes not just the heterosexual community, this includes same-sex couples, this involves transgender individuals. This is across the entire spectrum. And MJ, I don't know, one thing that I think is really important to talk about is that in the US, 3 women are killed every day by an intimate partner.
Yep.
So
I think it's 127 every day around the world. I've got some stats here I can talk about later, but as far as DV goes with me, it was never, so there was lack of physical touch as a married couple you would normally have. That romance was not there. I was a bit confused. It's like warfare under a house, you know, your castle, but the war is not happening outside the castle walls, it's happening inside. And when I left, I was on a Friday, and that Sunday I went to a church for the first time. And the funny thing is, or the ironic thing is, I married this guy who I met in Bible college, and we were going to have a church. And then as soon as we got married, we never went to church again. We didn't go to a Bible study. If I mentioned anything about the word, he rebuked me and said I was like an idiot for bringing it up. But anyway, when I left that 6 years later, someone asked me what my name was. And I thought about it because I'm like, man, if I say my name and I say it out loud, he will hear me from wherever he is. And he was 3 hours away, and appear out of thin air and know exactly where I am. I was terrified of this guy, and I could not wrap my brain around that fear. It's actually a phobia, I found out, but that's what he did to me. He got into my cellular level of my thinking, and I became kind of brainwashed in many different ways. And you don't know it. I was that proverbial frog in the water. It didn't happen overnight. It took 6 years for me to become whole, and it's hard to leave. It's hard to understand, and especially when there's no physical violence, because I had set it up years ago, probably in my 20s. If any guy ever hits me, you know, I'm out of there. Well, that never happened. So I didn't have a fail-safe in place of, gosh, what about financial abuse? What about verbal abuse? What about abandonment? What about isolation? What about all of that inside the marriage as well as outside the marriage? So I didn't really have a concept of abuse until after I lived through it.
Well, so then, so let's go into that. So maybe I think so. It sounds like we've got a decent definition, and maybe just just to kind of clarify, is there a difference between DV and IPV, or are they just synonyms?
No, I don't think there's any difference. I think it's just a way to include all the different types of relationships that are out there now.
Okay, I always kind of wondered that. I knew that some of the, because terms change as time goes on, and I knew when I was a legal aid attorney, I knew we had DV attorneys, right? Now that they're DV IPV attorneys, I was wondering, so what, and again, if it's semantics or if it's sort of, but it sounds like it's more inclusive, right? Because obviously I think with the term domestic, it probably presumes there's a marriage, there's a home, you don't necessarily have to be in a domestic situation in order for abuse to occur. So I think I welcome that. I mean, I think that, because too many people will continue to get abused if we allow certain terms to be kind of, what that is. So that's helpful to me. I hope it's helpful for the audience as well. I know, MJ, thank you for sharing a lot of your particular experiences. I think it might be helpful before we jump into sort of a little bit of our discussion about obviously the COVID effect and then what we're doing beyond, is maybe just some helpful things for those out there. Because again, we all have loved ones in our lives. We may, hopefully not that person, but what are signs of abuse, right? So like what are some ways that if, I know that you had mentioned your experience and your story, but for those of us out here, number one, if it's a coworker or if it's a friend or a sibling or just somebody we know, what would be some signs out there that may, and again, doesn't necessarily mean there's abuse happening, but kind of like for those of us out here, like if we see this, maybe we need to kind of do something. And then are there some tips for us if we do spot these signs? How do we approach that kind of talk? Because I mean, I would imagine it's a kind of an, hey, I think you might be having, yeah, most of us might shut up because of just sort of the social awkwardness of even going there, right? So maybe just a little bit of that just for the viewer, because I think that we've got you here. Maybe we can get that info.
Sure. Well, I can start off. I'll be super quick. So because I didn't work, I didn't have any coworkers. I wasn't allowed to go see the neighbors. So I was very much isolated and alone. So my only contact with the outside world was him. And I didn't even have a phone. I didn't have internet. I didn't have cable. So I had my children and I could talk with them on occasion. So I would tell stories. Now you don't want to tell a lot of stories because you don't want your children to think badly of your husband and of your choice of husband. And you don't want them to be in fear for you. And you don't want them to, you're embarrassed. You're also embarrassed. You're in shame. You're, dang, I've screwed up again. I've got this guy and he's not really super nice to me. So you become kind of an actress. So what my daughter did the same year that I left, it was in January, she asked me a question. And this might be all the question you need to ask someone who you think might be in a situation that they're not really sure what they're in. They just know it's not good. It's just to say, hey, are you afraid of him? That's all my daughter said. And it really made me think. And I had to be honest. And if I had to lie to my child, I knew that was a red flag. So I really think that's a super great question to ask someone.
I think just MJ says, I think that there's the intimate partner violence looks so different in every situation. It's easy to see when someone has a black eye or an injury that you can see, but the psychological damage is so long-term impactful. And it also impacts not only the victim, but it impacts the children. So I think one of the things you would look for, so of course you can see signs of physical violence. I mean, people who, if you see there's marks and they always have an excuse, I'm clumsy. Now I am clumsy, but you know what we're talking about is it just doesn't seem to happen. It doesn't seem to make sense and it repeats itself. I think also you see people who one time may have been very involved. They may have had an outgoing personality and you see that they don't interact with people. MJ was talking about how she didn't go to church. I think that's a real sign of someone, or someone who doesn't leave the person, their partner's presence. I think a lot of times that control of not letting the person have independent conversations, I think the more isolated is really a clue. You also see sometimes people who, it may appear nice, but the person who always picks up their intimate partner at work. They stand at the door, pick them up. They call work very, very frequently. There's a lot of communication. Those type of things, you can see someone's apprehension. I think one thing you can do is you can call the Greater Charlotte Hope Line that we just discussed, and you can call them and they can give you advice. They can talk to you about things to say. You are not an expert and you're not expected to be, but I think one thing that, again, MJ talked about is showing you care. You know, to say, hey, if you ever need anybody, I'm here. No judgment, just want you to know I'm thinking about you. I've missed contact and I'm not upset. I just want to be here if and when you need a friend.
Absolutely.
And I think not sounding judgmental, because, and to be that constant sense of if and when you need a friend, I'm here. And, you know, it takes people, it's the average one that takes people 7 times to leave an intimate partner relationship. And hopefully what we hope is all the support we have and the programs we have and the court and the free legal representation, maybe it will be the first time, but maybe it'll be the third. And those times we just want it to happen for the person when they are ready, and it has to be their decision. I think that's one of the most important things to understand is you can see it, you can be afraid for them, you can think these, and it may seem logical, but remember that even though it doesn't make sense to us, the control, they may have every financial piece. Person may not have had a career, they may not have a career to go back to. They may have been threatened so many times with, you're gonna lose the kids and I will win. Because they will use facts that someone does. We all have things that we may not want to be talked about in a family law court about ourselves. And those people are very manipulative. I've always said when I used to do the DVPO hearings, when I would talk to the defendant, if they weren't represented, the more charming the defendant was, the more likely I thought he was probably really guilty or she was guilty, because it's a great refined way of isolating the person and making them feel that they don't see things correctly. And so I think when you see that, you try to support, but remember, it has to be their time, and you can support them, but it is by far the most dangerous time. The person is most likely to be harmed, physically harmed or killed, is when they're leaving.
When they're leaving, so exactly.
That's got to be their decision.
And it took me, my daughter asked me that in January, and then I actually fell off the back of a pickup truck and broke my pelvic bone. And I was forced to be in a wheelchair and basically relearn how to walk. And that's a story that's on my website under my little ebook, Diamonds, War, and Cookies. Is a brief look of what I went through in deciding when to leave and how to leave. And it wasn't until I actually had all that time to relearn how to walk that I started noticing and putting things together and understanding that he truly did not care about me. But it did take 10 more months for me to leave him after she approached you. You don't want to believe that there's a problem. You want it to be better. I had so much hope, even the day I was leaving, that he would just call and be like, man, I've really screwed up. I'm so sorry. And I can't wait to come home and see you and talk to you about it. But actually, I think the night before he was going to kill me with a pillow. And I sort of thwarted that effort without me knowing it. And it took about 3 years before I understood that's what the pillow was for when he brought it out. So yeah, it's definitely very scary at the end because we don't know what to expect. We don't want him to come home while we're in the middle of moving, because you don't know how he's going to respond. We know that he's angry. Even if he's never hit us, he's put holes in the walls. He's told us what he's done to others. He's made sure to be very intimidating, growling towards us or using his physical presence to be larger than life than we are. So we're very much in fear when we leave. And it's a good fear. And you can actually call the police when you go to leave. You can ask for assistance. I've talked to all these police chiefs, and they're saying, yes, definitely call us. We can be there to help you. So definitely reach out to the cops, and they will help you leave him.
Okay. I mean, I think this is really valuable information. So we get an idea that in a partner violence, it's very diffuse, meaning that it isn't just physical, right? It can be emotional, it can be psychological. You know, it's and you know, I think we didn't talk about, but it does cut across. It's one equal opportunity offender in many respects, right? I mean, now it does have disproportionate effects on maybe communities of colors and low income communities, but it doesn't matter where you are or who you are. You know, from what it can affect you, and it can affect someone you love, right? And I think that's important to know. I kind of want to go into a little bit about that most dangerous point. I picked up on that, and you know, the point of leaving, because I think that's, and I think I'm definitely with Safe Alliance, and obviously later on when you can get the service as a VictoryLife house, but that is a real kind of tense. I mean, that's a very understatement there, a tense moment. Now this is the idea. This is where the social sector, the nonprofit sector, government, everything is that once the victim learns or determines that they are a victim, because number one, I think it's kind of hard to kind of say, wait, I'm a victim here. So that may take some time to kind of come up with that realization. But then when you get to that point, you said like that 7th time, right? It takes 7 times to leave. Where can you go? Right? I mean, I maybe you can go to your parents or something. I know there's a lot of other options, but because of the disproportionate effect on communities of color, low income communities, where can you go? If maybe you're displaced, like I think you said that you were in from Western North Carolina, and now you're here in Charlotte. What if you were from Western America, right? I mean, you were from California, right? You're displaced geographically. I mean, and so I think maybe can tell the story and the options that are available to variety of folks when they hit that point that they're ready to leave. Because I think that kind of talks about why organizations like yours are so important.
You want to go ahead, Laura?
Sure. I think that, you know, like we said, there is an incredible amount of people who are displaced from it. And that's when we talk about our shelter. It's an imminent danger shelter. And that means that someone is in that initial crisis where they are endangered. So that shelter, but as I mentioned, you know, we are almost always full because it is we try to maintain people in the shelter for a number of months to help them be able to get stable enough to and assist with them finding other housing. So it's not a simple solution. For those of us in Mecklenburg County, clearly know that housing and affordable housing is in a crisis condition here. So it is extremely difficult. I really recommend, and I know I keep pointing this, but I think calling the Hope Line is incredibly important. Those staff are well trained in how to refer. They're trained, they know not information about every county of how to connect to the resource, the local county support for someone. That is definitely a part of it. And I do think that people, as they think through, they do want to think about this planning. And when you call the Hope Line, you know, you are able to really sit and they will work through. These are different options, ways that you can be able to prepare for leaving. Because I don't think, I mean, of course, if there's a violent event, then you go, if someone goes to the hospital or police come, those are people who many times end in our shelter. But a great majority of survivors who leave, that process is like MJ talked about. You go through a process and you do that planning, and there is support for that and communication. So again, I continue to point people to the Hope Greater Charlotte Hope Line, because you have trained advocates who understand the process and can help with that guidance.
And they can even go to their family. They can go to friends. Now, friends usually don't let you stay, you know, weeks on end, but it's a good overnighter to kind of get your head around what your next steps are. And that's when you can call the Hope Line. Basically, you want to get out of the situation that you're in as quickly as possible, as safely as possible, with all of your important documents, children, pets, whatever it is you need, so you can be in a stable location in order to start making your future plans from that point on. But first you got to get out. And often you're controlled by this guy, so he's got control of your phone and who you have contact with. So you have to be super careful about when you call, who you call, deleting any kind of history of where you're looking online, etc.
I think with what MJ said is, I think it's really important to be thinking, and that's one of the things that the guidance that you can get on those calls is take copies of passports, the documents you want to have. How do you make copies of those and store them before you leave? Is there a way? Is there someone who will hold the documents, even if they're not a place you would feel safe going to, because maybe the abuser would know you would be there? But can you get copies of those things? They're very important to be as prepared as possible.
Well, I think definitely I've heard it come up a couple of times now. It sounds like a very important resource for folks is the Greater Charlotte Hope Line. And so I would hope that maybe either in the chat or at the end of the episode that we can at least produce that number, or without the age of Google, you can just at least remember, Greater Charlotte Hope Line. It's Hope Line, not Helpline, right? Hope Line.
Hope. And if you put in Safe Alliance, it's going to come up as well, but it is the Greater Charlotte Hope Line.
Yeah, no, I think that's because I think, a lot of us, or maybe we're struggling even with the terminology, but I think we want to help. And I think there are folks out there who can guide you, right? Whether you are in the victim seat or whether you're in, in your observer seat, right? And I think that's a great takeaway for folks to have. I think Emily, you talked about something, and I want to kind of move into the next thing where you said your abuser typically has access to your communications, has access to your phone, your computer, your internet. We have just spent, and we're about to get. I'm hoping that we're out of this in a while, but the CDC has called it the pandemic within the pandemic, right? The issue of, we've all been quarantined, for a number of months now. And so I kind of want to explore a little bit about what has the effect of COVID been on intimate partner violence, and what has been when that effect, because again, if the idea is get out and you've got the CDC and the government saying stay home, I mean, there's some competing life issues here. And I think that it's hard to kind of navigate. So I'd love to get based on both your takes on sort of the quarantine versus the get out aspect. And again, because, these are not, definitely the last year wasn't easy times to kind of have to make decisions based on one or the other.
Yeah, I think that COVID's had an incredible impact, and it's very interesting. Some communities, that their hotlines have gone up significantly in how many people are contacting, but we saw it first in a really large increase and then a stabilization. Because you think about, if you're locked in your house with your abuser, it's very hard to sit and call a hope line or for guidance. I think that we won't even know the full extent until we see people start opening back up. Children were home, so it was very hard for the person. And stress is not the reason someone abuses, but stress plays a part in abuse. I think we know that this has been an incredibly stressful time. Mental health has been impacted. Substance abuse has clearly become much heightened. All of those things go to factors that contribute to escalating the violence. They're not the cause of the violence, but they contribute to the escalation of it. And so COVID is very much impacted. Unfortunately, I think it's not just DV, it's probably child abuse and child maltreatment. And we just don't have, because the number1 reporter in Mecklenburg County is Charlotte Mecklenburg schools. Well, if children weren't going to school, and still I think it's about 40%, and I could be very wrong on that statistic, of children who, even with them back in school 4 days a week, haven't returned to school. So I think a lot of our normal ways that the violence gets seen, church, work, school, those type of social interactions, that it has really been very frightening to have been locked in a home with an abuser. And it's not like you could take your kids and run and go stay at a neighbor's for 2 nights. That would have been very difficult. And so we definitely have seen the impact, and COVID has been significant.
Yeah, one of the police chiefs I talked to in Waynesville, that's on my website, he was saying that DV really, and it's a very small town, Waynesville, but DV really hasn't gone up, but child abuse has, and child sexual assault. And I was kind of surprised. I said, well, was that from the parent or like the people that they kept the child with during the day? And he said, well, actually, it was a lot of it was child on child because they were left alone because both parents or a parent was out working. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was because of COVID, you know, that mm-hmm. they've seen this type of increase.
Man, yeah, no, I mean, I think that, you know, I can imagine even like a year ago where they say stay home, and then what was the effect and how have shelters been dealing with COVID? I was kind of curious about, obviously, is there more focus on hotels and things and other things, but then, you know, if it's, I mean, obviously masks and stuff, but I'd be kind of interested to see like what the trajectory and how reopening, you know, the mandates of the governor kind of affected shelters.
Well, I want to give, and I really feel strongly about this, Mecklenburg County, led by Dina Diorio, has done a remarkable job in helping us in the homeless situation. With the public health department has been on call and been always available when we needed to map out whether we needed to quarantine. They were very responsive, as both our hospitals were, if we had a case where someone needed to be treated. Because it is an incredible crisis. I mean, you're in a communal living situation for people who are coming in and out because of crisis, and they are coming in and you're doing the best. So we put in with Mecklenburg County Public Health Department, reviewed our plans. So we did very careful screening. Everyone was required to wear a mask. We started with very strict quarantine rules, but then as time has come on, we have been able to relax those some. Again, Mecklenburg County has been great about trying to assist with people who choose to be vaccinated at all of the shelters. And they have supported the hotels and have done some really remarkable things of, if we had people we needed to quarantine, that we were able to have a hotel that they did the actual making, you know, they staffed that hotel. Now we staffed the other homeless hotels. So it has been a interesting and incredible learning opportunity. It's been exhausting, and just like for everyone, I do say we got to all get out pretty much 7 days a week. So we didn't have to sit at home because we were working at the hotels. So that, you know, there's always some good on both sides, right? So, but it was really a time, and I'm really so impressed with my staff. We have been able to, so far, we have not had a documented transmitted case between staff or clients. And that's really remarkable in a communal living situation. But as we all know, that can end tomorrow. And we just, as Lee said, it has been an incredible, it's been an incredible challenge, but an incredible opportunity to partner with other people in the community. Both Salvation Army and Roofs Above have been incredible partners for Safe Alliance, as well as the county, to try to deal with this. So we weren't alone facing the challenge, and but it has been something I hope that I don't ever get to do again. So,
some of the research I did was that so many of the shelters, because they were required to lower their numbers, you know, they had to have more space per person. You lost a lot of people along the way. So there really is not enough shelter space available.
No, I think that's a huge key, because I think earlier, we talked about the lack of affordable housing, you know, and I think that one of the topics we had way early in our show, in the history of our previous episodes, we had Don Jonas, who at the time was at Caring, and we had a long discussion about social determinants of health. And, you know, and I think one of the social determinants of health is violence, right? I think I think if you take that ACEs test, right, you know, kind of how much, you know, obviously it's filled with questions related to trauma and things that have affected you. And I think the idea of not enough shelters, we have not enough housing. You know, we had Sarah Cherney here from Junior Achievement, and we were talking about jobs and employment, right? And because I think like MJ, you had talked about you didn't have a job, that your abuser kept you from having a job, and then when you did have a job, you didn't feel like you had the skills to do your job.
Not at all.
And so we've got all these other social kind of, contexts, right? Because again, from what I'm gleaning here, and it's like IPV, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. If it did, it might probably be a lot easier to cure, right? But we've got so many multi-nefarious and multi-factor, things, such again, lack of shelters, right? Lack of places to go initially when you make that decision. But then long term, right? Where am I going to live with my children? If where am I going to work? How am I going to work? And obviously the COVID didn't do a great job for either of those things. But one of the things that we have seen with COVID is there have been some really huge laws that have been passed. And I think people really have not grasped that, obviously we had the CARES Act, and that was last year, but then the huge stimulus that came out. And now we've got a huge infrastructure bill, which I think in some way, shape, or form will pass. Again, that there's a lot of politics, but we've seen that in reaction to COVID, there have been reforms, or there have been, and I think that there's been a level of checkbooks going like this as opposed to going like that normally, which normally is a history of politics, is we can't afford that. Now it's a little bit more on the what can we do with this money. So what I'd like to talk about a little bit, because again, the topic was domestic violence, intimate partner violence during the pandemic and beyond, is talk a little bit more about the beyond, right? And so I think we heard a little bit about the Family Justice, the Umbrella Center, and maybe we can talk a little bit more about that. I know that MJ, you were talking about some reforms in the law, particularly utilizing virtual. What's the world as far as victims' rights and opportunities for and their families and everyone going forward in this sort of, I'm not, don't quote me saying that, well, Kavagnat said that COVID is over, and what's a post-COVID world? I didn't say that, but I'm just saying as we are moving towards a post-COVID world, what opportunities and what kind of things are happening here in Charlotte and I guess and beyond?
So go ahead, Laura, you're in the legal realm.
Sorry, I thought I had that off. I think the things we see in the post-COVID, I think it's interesting, the money and the stimulus you talk about, we have definitely seen even us, as those checks were written to individuals, we saw the demand for housing decrease for a time for the emergency shelters. It put people in a place where they may be able to have gone for a while. So it's always interesting to see some of the impact. I think financially, it has made a difference for people to have that support, and they've been able to potentially make some decisions. I do think, as we know, there is a crisis of affordable housing. As you've spent a whole series of time, I'm sure, having that here would take hours and hours.
I can't stay away from affordable housing, whether I was teaching it or now I'm, here. I can't stay away from that topic. No. That's true.
And I think just like you talked about the ACE score is definitely something where the trauma of not having safe, secure understanding of your housing, the impact on those things in your lifetime and what it does to age, when you age, your health issues that arise from it. It's not just where do I lay my head tonight? That stress is, pivotal to someone's long-term life. So it is worth teaching those classes, doing that work, because it is life altering. So
Absolutely.
I think we're going to, go ahead, please.
I was just thinking, when I was going through it, the fear of the unknown is rather paralyzing. So not knowing your options tends to make you not do anything. So it's super great to be able to have your organization available for so many people who can utilize it. I'm super proud of you guys.
There's a tear. That's great stuff. That's great stuff. Well, so we're talking about beyond. I would love to just I know that we talked about maybe the virtual hearings. I know. So what's the status of that? Do we feel like, I know that courts are reopening. I know that they're little by little, dribs and drabs. You can come in. Now it used to be between like 2 and 3. Now maybe it's between 1 and 5. They're reopening and such. But do you see some sort of permanency? Because I think this sounds it sounds great if abusers don't necessarily. I mean, you technically still have to confront, right? There's still that constitutional notion of confronting that person, but there's nothing in the Constitution that you have to actually be in the same room, right? I mean, I don't really
That would be wonderful. That was one of the things I was wanting to talk to the senators about. A couple of months ago, I started reaching out. Of course, I went to the federal level first, worked my way down to North Carolina level senators, and nobody's called me back or written me an email. But anyway, one of my things was, it's very intimidating to go into a courtroom. Number one, maybe the first time you've ever stepped into a courtroom is when you're trying to get a divorce. And it's for domestic violence, a violent situation. So that would be a first key, that you actually should not be around this violent situation or this person. So now you're in a courtroom. Now you've got a judge, you've got attorneys, you've got cops walking all around, you've got firearms all around, you're walking through metal detectors. You don't know where you are. You're hoping to get to the right floor in the courthouse by the right time. Now you're up front, you're next to the judge, you're sitting next to this high court person, and you see your abuser, 10 feet from you, just glaring at you. And it was all I could do to speak. Like, there's a microphone, probably for people like me who I was in such fear. It's like all I could do to just talk, it's just, so the intimidation factor is really huge. And a lot of so I have some friends who are cops, and they've been to so many of these court cases with the abuser and the victim, and the victim just says, I forgive him. I'm just gonna waive my right to be out of this relationship, and I'm just gonna go back with him, because I think they're in so much fear, and it's so much easier to just go back than to try to figure out, how am I going to do this on my own, and then have to go through all of this court stuff. So my idea was, why do they even have to see each other? How horrible. It's a domestic violence situation. Let's let the victim and the abuser, the accused, be in separate rooms, and the judge can figure it out between videos. And I think, Laura, you were saying that that's actually happening, which I was so excited. I just think that's wonderful. So share about that.
Okay. Well, WebEx, every county's different. So for anyone outside Mecklenburg County, and as Rocky said, it changes frequently because everyone's trying to adjust to COVID and the requirements. But WebEx has been initiated in the DVPO hearings. Now, it's not every case, because you have to have a defendant who is able to access the court through electronic mechanisms. But in those cases, they are scheduling those. And for example, now, if someone comes to victim assistance, if they go to court, they will have an advocate sit with them. And if they go into court that's for the emergency hearing, they will have an advocate. And if they go for the 1 year, they'll either have an advocate with them, or they will have an attorney with them. So they don't have to sit there completely alone. Yes, they do have to testify. And there is, as Rocky mentioned, the constitutional right for people to confront their accuser. And so that it is incredibly difficult, but we hope we have built some support for victims for trying to seek a protective order. Or in criminal court, we also provide that services at Safe Alliance. But we are seeing the WebEx, the hearings, they are, I think, as all new technology, it's definitely, things are working better and better, but it is a challenge, and we're all working through that. I do think one of the benefits of COVID will be that we're going to see this much more often. We're going to see that WebEx will move quicker. I don't know. I think it's very hard from speaking to some of the judiciary, in very complex hearings that take a couple of days, they don't find WebEx to be that easy to do, because it's very hard to cross-examine a witness. It's hard to submit evidence, but I think that technology will continue to grow, and this will be a way we will move in the future.
All right. And so talking about the beyond, I think we did kind of discuss it. I'd love to be able to kind of end the discussion today about it, is the Umbrella Center, right? So I mean, before we head out, it's like, again, I did see a passing discussion of it, you know, an article maybe in the Charlotte Business Journal a couple of days ago. But for those of you, I mean, we did kind of touch on it, but I mean, is it done? I mean, so what I'm asking here is is there a role for those of us in the community to kind of help get this CO, you know, everything, you know, get the groundbreaking going? Where are we now with the family, with the Umbrella Center, and what can we as a community to do to get behind it?
Well, that's a great question. The Umbrella Center is a family justice center. And what a family justice center is that a survivor can come one place and they can receive services from all the service providers. And they don't just come the day of the crisis. They can come time later to have assistance with protective orders, but they can also have meetings with the district attorney's office for a criminal hearing. They can have job training. They can have counseling for themselves and their children. Our goal is to have a medical where forensic medical exams can be done, where the rape kit could be done at that center. So you come into a trauma-informed environment where you have one navigator, one person who helps connect you to all those services. And this isn't a new idea. There's 130 of these family justice centers across the country. Nashville has the largest and just an amazing center. And so it's really something that we have incredible services for domestic violence and sexual assault victims and child abuse victims. But we need to make it easier because it is such a time of crisis that when you are in that the victim can't be expected to go 9 places, go fill out 20 different forms, park 6 different times, put their child in care so that they can go and seek those services. And so that's the mission of a family justice center. Where we are now is we're trying to seek the support of the city, who is at this time evaluating. And so if you have a city council member and you feel passionate, please send them a note, say you think this is important. Our county has committed to putting this in their funding proposal. And we are seeking, about ready to begin the public fundraising, because this is a public-private partnership. We're not asking the government to pay for all of it. We're saying that we will go raise the funds as the nonprofits for half or more than half of the cost, and asking the city and county to each carry a part of that cost. So your support, now we're not at the point we're not breaking ground. And that's why the reason we did the Survivor Resource Centers. We thought it was so essential to have this, you know, coordinated care in one place where we partner to help the most at-risk victims. So we have that center now, and you know, we're looking forward to having our own family justice center, which will be called the Umbrella Center in Mecklenburg County.
Well, that's fantastic. If you look in your chat, MJ, one of our audience members who I had to leave for another meeting, Sarah, who works in our office, has given you her email, MJ. She is connected with Senator Mujtaba Muhammad, who he's a really great guy, actually. I know him too, and she's friends with him and can put you in touch with Senator Muhammad, who is very strong on these type of issues. I think that
awesome.
He would be a good person to talk to and see if maybe we can. And he's also got experience in the courtroom. So if anybody could write a bill that could maybe make the virtual hearings for the DPVO type of hearings a little more permanent, it'd be that guy.
Awesome.
So you get some takeaways when you come to the leadership series. You know,
I love it.
You know, so again, and this would be an opportunity now. I know that obviously this will be going up on the web into our YouTube, but give us a chance to find out how to reach you at this time. Again, both organizations are 501c3 public charities. So again, when you support Victory Lifehouse, when you support Safe Alliance, your donations are charitable donations. You can deduct them on your next year's taxes. That's a great thing. Obviously, we hope that you're giving it mostly for the reasons that you're going to support their missions. Help Victory Lifehouse push it towards the finish line with who help the victims after they've gone through some of the criminal with the civil and criminal justice system, as the case may be. And of course, with Safe Alliance, you know, we've got this family justice. It's gonna be all hands on deck. And I think that, you know, that IPV, DV, whatever you want to call it, it affects everybody. We got to do something about it. You know, so who are we in this community if we don't support this? It's actually a very small thing compared to the greater problem. So open up your checkbooks and do something for these organizations that are really, you know, doing the young person's work in addressing these issues. So anyway, maybe this time, maybe either you can put in the chat or just tell the folks how they can reach you. Well, I can see on yours, you got VictoryLife House right there. I need a background with, you know,
Very good. No, it's just VictoryLifeHouse.org. MJ Vess. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm no longer on Facebook. I just got off there this month. So really LinkedIn and my website. My email is VictoryLife-house.org. Info at VictoryLife-house.org. And then whatever's on my website, there's ways to contact me through phone numbers, through email, through contact forms, Calendly. You can get an appointment with me. So I'm pretty transparent on how to reach me. Thank you.
And for Safe Alliance, it's Safe Alliance. If you put in Safe Alliance Charlotte or just Safe Alliance, you're going to have our numbers into, if you do a Google search, our the Greater Charlotte Hope Line number is 980-771-HOPE, which is 4673. So it's 980-771-4673. And that's the greatest way to reach us and to reach those concerns. But if you put in Mecklenburg County Family Justice Center, we have a website, and we also have Safe Alliance website.
Fantastic. And I would love to have both of you back on the show when to celebrate the groundbreaking, or maybe just a ribbon cutting ceremony that happens when we do open this Umbrella Center. I think it'll be a real credit to this community, and it will be a community driven effort to get this going. And so if you know, obviously the journey of 1,000 miles starts with this first step, and I hope we're taking these early steps towards making this a reality. So for those of us here at Hull and Chandler, just want to thank you all for your time, and we'll see you next time here on the Leadership Series. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Take care, everyone.